The weather's cooperating. I think that's quite good, isn't it? It's good to have sadness and depression on a grey day. So that one. So remember, when we started, we said what we have to do is identify and observe the emotion. So all these words that you're receiving, sadness words, depressed words, then prompting events, interpretations, experiencing. This is all to be able to describe the emotion so that you know what you're experiencing. And then by knowing what you're experiencing, you're able to apply the antidote. So you have to be very precise about the emotion in order to find the right antidote. So this is the purpose of all these words, is because some people really don't know they're depressed. And then by going into all these words, they discover actually they're depressed or they're feeling very sad. So you've got 2 pages, and then you can also supply other examples, other things that you think of. But it's in order to find the sadness and the depression in our lives, and then the effect in our lives, and what produces, in the circumstances, in the conditions, what brings out the depression in you or the sadness in you. So that's today. And then I have another one for you to work on. Which is the emotional regulation checklist. Maybe I'll give you that tonight, later today. I'm sort of a bit worried about overloading you because we've got to go quite quickly. Usually this course is over 10 days, and so we're doing it quite fast. But Jen said to me, they're New Zealanders, they can do it. The Germans, we're not sure about. But the New Zealanders, they're tough, they're gritty. They've had to deal with difficult conditions for many years. The Germans have very pleasant conditions. Yeah. So just to be aware that we're going quite quickly, and so I don't want to overload you. So I think lunchtime you can take away the sadness and depression. You can think about it, discuss in the groups, discuss guilt, regret. And then along with guilt and regret is, do I think I can purify? Do I think I can remove these negative memories? If you can't, you're never going to become enlightened. So the whole of Buddhism falls apart. If you think that the memories that you have, the negative ways of behaving, if you think that they're always going to be there, there's no potential for enlightenment. So we might as well give up. Have a party. Go home. What's the point in all of this? All of this is based on the fact that we can purify, that we can change our minds, that we can become perfect. That inside is that seed of perfection. That potential of perfection. It's inside. Every one of us has it, right down to the mosquito. But every one of us has it, but not every one of us encourages it, develops it, grows it to its full potential, which is enlightenment. So that's the good news story about Buddhism, is that it teaches you about that potential. The bad news is it forces you to face the suffering. Because it says, unless you face the suffering, you're not going to deal with the consequence of the suffering. That's the problem. We have the consequence that we're living, but where did the consequence come from? And am I a victim of the consequence? Am I a victim, or am I going to take control? Am I going to take back the power? Nobody can take the power away from me, but I give away the power. So I feel this is really important in this day and age where it feels like we're becoming powerless. We don't have the ability to control our lives. We often feel that there's nothing we can do about the past. In Buddhism, it teaches there's very much something we can do about it, but it starts with an attitude change. We must change the attitude, because when we hold on to the past, we hold on to it in our memories without forgiving, without wanting to move on from it. It's like you're holding on to that bag of potatoes and saying, yes, it's smelly and horrible, but it's mine. It's my bag of potatoes. And when they're all rotten and horrible, then I'll get a new bag of potatoes and carve the same names into the potatoes and start all over again. Time after time after time. When do you get tired of this? When do you say enough is enough and I must stop doing this to myself? So that's the beginning of self-kindness, self-compassion. But then it has to go further than that. Not just self-kindness and self-compassion, but having kindness and compassion for others. And then that's the forgiveness of others. Understanding that just as I'm created from karma and delusion, you're also created from karma and delusion. So how can I expect you to be more perfect than you can be because you're created from karma and delusion? You know, when you put people in a perfection mode, you think they're supposed to be perfect. They're supposed to not make any mistakes. And yet you make mistakes because of karma and delusion, right? When you think of others in the wrong way, if you like, in the way that's impossible for them, you're thinking of them as perfect. They make mistakes. How can they make mistakes? I thought they were perfect. But there's karma and delusion. So if all of us have karma and delusion, we're all susceptible to making mistakes, to getting it wrong. And so then forgiveness can arise because of karma and delusion. And karma means action. So we all do actions in order to survive, isn't it? Day after day. We do actions to survive, but we want to do more than survive. We want to have a more beautiful mind than just the survival mind, just the hanging on the cliff, surviving day after day. We want to do more than that. In order to do more than that, we need to change the psyche, to change the mind. So to forgive yourself for the mistakes that you made in the past that resulted in your present suffering. This is very hard. How am I experiencing this life suffering? Is it caused or is it good luck, bad luck? You have to decide your system. Good luck, bad luck, right? That's what it is, if you think of it that way. Is it caused in the sense of karma, or is it a god and the god did it to you? So, or I don't know, Muhammad, or whoever you believe in, did they give it to you? Did you create it? Or the third one, bad luck, good luck. There's nothing involved. There's no karma, no God, just good luck, bad luck. So Lama Zopa says, good luck, bad luck. If it's like that, again, we might as well go home. Because there's nothing to do. There's no system. Right? No system. Then you come down to two choices. There's a creator or there's karma. So in Buddhism, no creator, nobody did it to you, but you did it to yourself. Why? Because we indulge in negative actions at the time. We think they're good for us. They think we're going to get happiness from it. And then afterwards, maybe we feel guilty, maybe we feel bad, but we don't purify because we don't know about it, and then that negative action that we do starts to grow and is going to produce a result, and the result is greater than the cause. So look at the trees. Tiny seed, huge tree. You know, I often remember my teacher in India saying, from little acorns, you know, we have this saying in the West, isn't it? You know, from little acorns, big trees will grow, and then you get fruit on the tree. The fruit drops from the tree, creates more trees, more fruit. So from that one little seed, you get a lot of result. And that's how karma works. That over time, your karma is multiplying. And the more that we do something similar, the more potential there is to have that habit, that result, which is going to be stronger than if you just did one thing and you never did it again. That's understandable, isn't it? You keep redoing it, redoing it, redoing it. The karmic potential becomes stronger because you're planting those similar seeds in the mind, which are going to ripen into a strong result, as opposed to you do it once and you never do it again. There's a big difference between the two. So there's karmic habituation, I call it. Karmic habituation. Habits that you keep karmically repeating produce a stronger result because you're doing it over and over and over. So think about that in the negative way, but what about thinking of that in the positive way? Positive karmic habituation. Making others happy. Doing something positive for them. I like this idea of random acts of kindness. You know, that yes, your parents, your family, you know, there's some sort of expectation of you being kind. But what about a stranger? I don't know if it still exists, but in Australia, there used to be this idea of pay it forward. That you could give some money and then somebody would get a cup of coffee without paying and they'd be totally shocked. You know, you're getting a free cup of coffee. But how? But who? But where? We don't know. But just you're getting a free cup of coffee. I think that could really touch somebody for the rest of their lives. They might never forget that they got a free cup of coffee. The financial thing is nothing. It's a few dollars. But what it does to somebody emotionally is amazing. So this idea of what can I do for others that would be, in a way, a kind surprise. Something that they never even dreamt of, thought of. So karmic habituation works in the negative way of developing negative habits. Every time you go back to that fear, that anxiety, that sadness, that depression, you're creating more and more potential for it to happen. On the other hand, the more you go to courage, strength, power, compassion, wisdom, patience, forbearance, generosity, whatever the good qualities are, choose one and keep going back to it on a daily basis. Every day I keep going back. Because this is eroding the value of this strong negative emotion. So, you know, one of my students, very angry with his sister and really wanted to work on his patience and his tolerance. So day after day after day, meditating on patience, thinking about patience. And when he saw his sister, jumped on the table, shouted at her, left the restaurant, came back, and then was able to sit with her. I'm not saying it's going to be easy to completely change the behavior, because we have karmic situations with people. Over years, you know, your sister can be saying, da 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 da, and you know, you see, and you sort of think, I know she's going to say something. Or your mother, I know she's going to say something, like that. So you're primed for it. You're ready for it. But if you want to change, you keep putting those karmic imprints into your mind stream of patience, of tolerance, whatever you want to change it to. And then the old habit can arise. You let it go, and then you're able to go to the new habit. The new habit came in. It cut in. So the meditations that you're doing are the samsara simulator, I nearly said stimulator. The samsara simulator, same as the flight simulator. When they're going to take off in airplanes, they have to practice taking off, landing, they crash and burn. Take off, crash and burn, take off, crash and burn. One day you take off and you think, oh wow, that's the technique. So your meditation is the technique, training the mind day after day after day into how you want to behave. I have great difficulty with my mother. So I see myself talking to my mother the way I want to talk to her, not with the irritability and the anger, not with the aversion, but with the love that I want to show her. But if there's a history there, then what comes out is the history. That's not who I want to be, but it seems like I have no choice. The irritability just arises because of the karmic habituation. So on the cushion, you keep training your mind into the new habituation of the kindness or the compassion. You see, your mind doesn't understand the difference between real and visualized. Your mind doesn't understand the difference. So when you visualize your mother and you're being kind to your mother in the visualization, your mind thinks it's true. Exactly as if your mother's there. So we went to His Holiness the Dalai Lama a long time ago, and the group I was with wanted to ask His Holiness about this technique of hitting your mother. You know this one? The psychological technique. You're upset, you're angry, so you get a cushion and you beat the cushion. And you think, here you go, mum. Take this. And you let it all out. So they explain this to His Holiness, and His Holiness is like, like this, the great being of compassion. Well, Your Holiness, we get that pillow, and we visualize the mother and we lay into her, and it gets all that negative energy out. And His Holiness said, no, people don't really do this, do they? Oh, yes, they do. And he said, oh, this is terrible. He said, the only thing missing is the real mother. The rest is there. The motivation, the action, the visualization, everything's there. The joy afterwards. I'm so happy, So he said, very dangerous, because you're planting these very negative imprints that are going to ripen as the potential of beating your mother, of the anger coming out towards your mother. He said, it's not going to heal the situation. So often we think that by doing these negative visualizations, we're going to be able to resolve it in the mind. But actually we're creating more potential in the mind to experience more problems in the mind. And then when we experience problems in the mind, they become speech and physical. So we need to be able to control the mind in order to live the lives that we want to live. Where does it come from? The motivation first thing in the morning, watching the actions through the day, dedicating at the end of the day. And if you're doing this for a particular reason, I really like the motivation for a particular reason, the dedication for a particular reason. So, for instance, low self-esteem. If you're working on low self-esteem, why are you getting out of bed in the morning? But at the end of the day, dedicating all the merit, all the positive energy to all those with low self-esteem. May they have confidence, may they have the strength to be able to improve, to change, etc. So I think it really helps to connect your dedication to those who are suffering in a similar way to you, then it's much more meaningful than just all sentient beings. I dedicate to all sentient beings. Any questions? David.
When you write the list, I take it from what you just said there that when you're writing the checking list,
Yeah.
it's not only about your interactions with others and the emotion and behaviour that brings up, it's also about any thoughts.
Thoughts are so important. You know, we have these negative thoughts, and then we think, lucky nobody heard me. We think we get away with it. But if you look at the 10 non-virtues, thinking is part of the 10 non-virtues. So you have malicious thoughts. If I could get that boss, I know what I'd do with that boss, string them up by the fingernails, blah, 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 blah. And then afterwards, when you've calmed down, when the anger's gone, then you think, oh, terrible. But at least nobody heard me. The problem is you've created mental karma. It's the weakest of the three. So you've got body, speech, and mind. Mind is the weakest because it wasn't anything spoken and nothing physical. The strongest is body, speech, and mind together. The next is speech. Then the weakest is mind. But you're planting all these negative seeds of negative thinking. Over time, if you kept thinking of the boss, I really don't like this boss, I really don't like this boss, I don't like this boss, you'd be planting karmic habituation seeds of dislike, and one day the boss could say something and you'll just reply back, and I hate you too. And then, and goodbye. And you think, well, where did that come from? Karmic habituation. You're planting the seeds, So we have to be very careful of the mind itself. The problem is, if we don't meditate, we don't know. If we meditate, we have to get to the point where we can see what's happening in the mind. We observe what's happening in the mind without involving what's in the mind. So to become the observer, to take one step back, as opposed to taking one step forward. Our habit is to take a step forward, into the situation. I involve myself in the situation. With meditation, we're taking one step back. We're observing. Ooh, that's a nasty thought. So I observe the nasty thought as it arises, or the fear thought, or the anxiety thought, or whatever that thought is. I just observe it as it arises. I don't think, ooh, interesting. I must go into that more. I just stay as the observer, watch it, and release it. It's all happening in the mind. So it has no tangibility. It has no power to make me suffer. But if I give it power, I give it the power to make me suffer. Right? So what do you choose to do with your mind? Do you choose to go into it, step forward, and put more negative energy into it? Or do you choose to step back, observe it, and release it? If you can't step back and release it, you can apply the antidote. So that's one step further. So what we're starting with is the tablets, the antibiotic tablets. But if that doesn't work, you've got the injection, which is the analytical meditations. So we start with the tablets. I just step back, I observe it, I label it, emotion, I choose to let it go. I label it anger, I choose to let it go. So you can just label it emotion, or you can put a particular label on it. And I choose to release it, I choose to let it go. Because I see the potential of that negative thought as creating more problems for my body and my speech. So in Canada, they tested, what does meditation do? Scientists wanted to know, what does meditation do? Because we say meditation's great for you. This is from 2,600 years of meditation. We're saying meditation's good for you, but scientists want to know, what does it do for you? What they discovered was that as a meditator, you start to see in split seconds. So the experiment was, they take cards, like playing cards, and they have a machine that flicks them at a certain rate, like that. So they're blank cards, some have letters, some have numbers. And as they're flicking it at a certain speed, quite fast, what they discovered was the meditators can see in split seconds. The non-meditators sometimes don't see anything for half an hour, 1 hour, not seeing anything, just white cards. So the difference between us and them, if you want to put it into that, the meditators, the non-meditators, what's the difference? You're seeing in split seconds. Makes you more sensitive to your mind, the thoughts that are arising, more sensitive to be able to say stop. So you're cutting down your karmic potential of negativity to a short time, a split second, and then I let it go. Whereas before, I can remember as a child being moody for days. Easy. Wouldn't speak to my mother for 3 days, 4 days, 5 days, whatever, because she wouldn't let me go to the Beatles concert. The woman was a nightmare, but she thought she knew best. She was my mother. So when you're small, your mother thinks she knows best. You think you know best, right? So I think it's very interesting to go back into your childhood, isn't it? Because when you're a child, you think you know best. You think you can make decisions and you know what's right, you know what's wrong. And it's a parent's it's a parent's responsibility to say no. So I often say that if your mother never said no to you, your father never said no, were they good parents? Because it's their job. They should say no. But all I can remember is I really wanted to go to the Beatles concert and my mother said no. No reason, just no, you're not old enough. I think I was about 10. But I'd saved the money to go. I was going to pay for it myself, but she wouldn't let me go. The next day, in the newspaper, so she got the newspaper, she showed me. In those days, women were much stronger than they are now. Because those women ripped the seats out of the concrete. You women have this capability. When you see the Beatles, you go completely berserk and you rip the seats out of the concrete and you throw them. So the cinema was completely trashed. Theatre, cinema was completely trashed because they go berserk. George, John, I can remember those days, when the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, all those groups. People got completely berserk. And so my mother showed me the photograph of the trashed place, and she said, "You see, your mother knows best." Didn't speak to her for days. Right? So we can have memories as children of when your mother said no, when your father said no, when negative things happened to us. Well, what are you going to do? Carry it round with you for the rest of your life? Or are you going to forgive it? Are you going to let it go? Because if you're not going to forgive it, who's going to forgive it? It's inside your mind. So the things that are being done to you, if you don't forgive it, who can forgive it? The things that you've done to others, who can forgive it? You've got to forgive it. So either way, it's got to be forgiven, but it's got to be forgiven in my own heart. You can go to somebody and say, "Please forgive me," and they say, "Oh yeah, okay, I forgive you," but still you don't feel something happened, change of heart. So to forgive oneself and to forgive the others, it's a very important healing journey into not acting out these negative, disturbing emotions. Because otherwise you're still carrying the baggage. You come on retreat, you're at home, you've got your suitcase, and you think, "I'll pack the anger, the jealousy, the hatred, touch of this, a bit of that, pack it all, arrive at Chandrakirti, hang it all up, the anger, the hatred. So you go on holiday or you go on retreat and you brought it all with you. No change. And then we go home and we think, oh, that was a nice break, but no change. So for me, I think if I'm continuing to teach and there's no change in the students, then what's the point in teaching? What's the point in having Dharma centers? You might as well become like a holiday center. Put a swimming pool and just let people enjoy themselves. We need to change. So now sometimes I hear Lama Zopa shouting, really shouting. And I think, why is he shouting? Because he's been teaching 40 years and he still sees people not changing. So what's the problem about not changing? Why are we attaching to the suffering, to the sickness? This is a burning piece of wood or a burning piece of iron, whatever you want to think of, but it's burning. I hold on to it and I say, it's really hot and it's really burning. And I say to you, let go. And you say, oh, but I can't, it's mine. You understand? This is the ego. It's mine, my suffering. So are we willing to let go of our suffering? Because it becomes part of our ego, becomes part of who we are. You know, I am a depressed person. I am an angry person. I am a jealous person. Whatever it is, it becomes part of the persona. And then perhaps we feel that we're going to lose something if we give it up, if we release it. And so we're holding on to that burning. It's burning me. It's damaging me. And it's damaging others. And the solution is, I let go. And yet I can't, because it's me. It's part of me. And I think sometimes it looks like it's too simple, that we need some sort of really complicated answer. But it can come down to just that. I choose to let it go. I choose to switch on happiness and switch off unhappiness. Lama Zopa said a while ago, happiness is just a switch. It's in the brain, it's just a switch. But we choose to switch on the depression, the anxiety, whatever it is. We choose to switch that on. And in the same way, we're switching off the good things, the positive things. So what do you choose for yourself? What do you choose to live by? What's your karmic habituation? So this retreat is part of the investigation. Not to come to the conclusions too quickly, but to investigate. You've got the time and the space to investigate. You hear the teachings, some of them are relevant to you, some are not. Some of this information I'm giving you is good for you, useful for you, some is not. It's okay, it doesn't matter. But you're investigating so that, like a doctor, like a surgeon, you come to that conclusion. The end of the investigation is, aha, this needs to be cut out. And I'm going to hurt the body, right? What does a doctor do? They cut. They know they're going to damage the body. But because there's compassion, they cut in order to remove the cause of the suffering. Right? If there's cancer there, they very carefully cut away the cancer so that the body can be healthy. In the same way, we need to look like scientists, like doctors, at the cause of our suffering. When we've found it, we've understood it, we've established it, we've labeled it, we need to cut it out. We need to remove it. Not hold on to it as part of my personality, part of me, part of my ego, and then continue on and say to people, oh, poor me, you know, I'm sad, or poor me, I'm depressed, or poor me, whatever. It's not poor me, it's I chose. I decided. Stop the poor me. Because I chose, I decided to be this. Buddhism gives you the choice. If you're choosing to be depressed, okay, but don't be the victim of depression. Don't be the victim of anger. You have the choice to be able to change. If there's no choice, there's no enlightenment. You can't do anything if there's no choice. There is choice, but choice is so difficult because of karmic habituation. The hardest thing to give up is smoking, isn't it? The hardest thing to give up. My heroin addicts smoked. So they smoked and they had heroin. And when they gave up heroin, later on they went to Harley Street and they went into a coma. Cost them £50,000 each. For 1 week they went into a coma, and when they came out of it, they were off heroin. They found out later 50% of people die in that coma because it's such a shock to the body, they could have died. So because they had money, they were able to do that, but they still smoked. So they said to me, smoking is more difficult to give up than heroin. It's so addictive. And one of the problems is, socially, it was acceptable, right? I remember the time where you could smoke anywhere. My mother smoked 40 Capstan full strength a day. My grandmother smoked Players full strength. She was French. And my father rolled his own. So we used to have the three of them smoking in the room. I don't know where the TV was. It was somewhere somewhere in the haze over there, you know. And doctors never said smoking was a problem. They never related it to lung disease or anything else. There was no problem with it, right? But whenever my mother was pregnant, she would give up smoking just because she decided. So my mother didn't have many qualities. She couldn't cook, she couldn't clean. She was a very weird woman. She was Irish. She was a weird woman because my father would bring home things for her. So she had, for cleaning, to make it more interesting, she had a Spanish outfit. You know, the flamenco outfit with the headdress and everything. And she had a record player, and she would carry this record player from room to room with flamencos and Brazilian music, Portuguese music, whatever. She'd play in each music, and as she was cleaning, she'd be dancing away. I had an odd childhood. So she wasn't a great mother, but when I sat and meditated on what did she do well, she didn't give me smoking. I thought, how amazing that she didn't smoke when she was pregnant with me. She could have, because nobody said anything, but she didn't. So if each one of us meditates on the kindness that's been given to us from very small, from when we were born, we didn't get aborted, is number one, right? Your mother had the ability to abort you. In those days, my mother used to sit around with the women from the area and they'd talk about home abortions, gin in the bath. I can tell you lots of things. Gin in the bath. How much gin you had to put, I don't know. But lots of home remedies that used to kill women. I knew people who died because of this. Didn't happen to me. Didn't happen to my mother. Right? And then she educated me, so she sent me to school. School uniform, books, food. She didn't know how to cook. All she knew was chips, egg and chips, sausage and chips. It's a very English menu, or Irish menu, I don't know. But just very basic. But still, she did her best, right? And so when you go into the past, you start to think, gosh, that person did their best for me. They were kind in their own way. Maybe it doesn't come up to my standards. I'd like special cuisine, and I'd like this, and I'd like this. Now, you might look back and think, well, I would much rather have. But if you look back at karma and delusion and what that person did for you, your mother, your father, whoever it is, your nurturer, the person who took care of you, they did their best given their limitations. So you rejoice, right? Instead of living with resentment and anger about what wasn't done, you're living with joy at what was done, at what was given to you. So for me, my mother didn't give me smoking. And then years later, I was in Copan, and somebody said to me, "Would you like me to bring something for you, a gift for you?" And I was thinking, a gift, what would I like? The only thing I was missing was licorice. So I wrote and said, "Can I have a pack of licorice?" And they thought, what a strange request from Copan, from Nepal. Anyway, they brought this licorice, and I was in retreat and thinking, so I started thinking, why licorice? It's bizarre, isn't it? You know, I was thinking to myself, yes, it is bizarre. Why licorice? What my mother gave me was the taste of anise, this aniseed, right? Because what she ate, after the war, they had Victory V's. They had these little lozenges. And she used to break them into small pieces. Instead of smoking, she'd eat these lozenges all day because she really wanted to smoke. But she couldn't. So she was eating these Victory V's, which is aniseed, and she gave me the taste of aniseed. And then I thought to myself, she could have given me smoking, or drinking, or drugs, or whatever it is. How kind. Yeah, she didn't let me go to the Beatles concert, but now I can forgive that. You know, you can get past it because she was being kind. She said no because she was being kind, not because she was being angry or hateful. She was being kind to her child that she wanted to protect. So we can have history with our parents, with our sisters, brothers, aunties, uncles. To go back into the past and heal is very important to be able to be the people that we want to be instead of our baggage, the baggage that we're carrying. Any questions?
No.
Signorina.
It's difficult for me to verbalize.
Oh, good. Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Is there any intent that we could bring into this basic Latin meditation?
Intent.
I mean, how do we approach this quietness in meditation
Yes.
in the desire
Yes.
to become a better human being without bringing some kind of an intensity? So how? I mean, it's perfect silence? I understand that.
Yeah.
It's not empty.
Yeah. Yeah.
But how can I approach this in my mind without some kind of an intent?
You can have an intention in the sense of, I sit because I want to be a better person, more compassionate, kinder, whatever.
That's not grasping.
No, because you have to have direction. If you don't give your mind direction, your mind doesn't know what to do, doesn't know which direction to go in. And so, while we're training to be bodhisattvas, we need to keep pointing in the positive direction. This is what I'm looking for. This is not what I'm looking for. So that's why I say, while we have karma and delusion is the operating system, we need to keep saying to the mind at the end of the day, this is positive, this is negative. This is the sutra system. Don't kill, don't steal, don't lie, don't. And in the opposite way, do protect life, do protect others' possessions, don't get intoxicated, etc. So we're saying avoid that, promote that. So with your intention to sit, give it a positive intention. Every moment of that positive intention is a positive seed or potential for the future because of the positive intention. But if you just sit, there may not be any intention at all. It could be just neutral. So you may not get a positive result from it. So my teacher, Geshe Sonam Rinchen, from the Tibetan library, he used to say, if you make an intention in the morning, bodhicitta, compassion. If you make that intention first thing in the morning, even though you forget the intention, every action after that intention is touched by that intention. It's part of it. It's flavored it, colored it. So you don't need to keep reminding yourself all through the day, compassion, compassion, compassion. Compassion is the day because you made the first intention. You understand? Yeah. The flavor's there. The intention has to be there because otherwise the action is just the action. Positive, negative, or neutral. So if there's no intention, it can be neutral. But you can be sitting on the cushion and it can become negative. You can remember something bad, it becomes negative. And if you didn't have a positive intention, then you could get into the negativity of it and it could become more and more negative. But if you remind yourself, I sat here for a positive intention in order to heal, in order to be a better person, I'm not going to allow this negativity to develop and grow. I choose to release it. And if I can't release it, I'm going to have to use the antibiotic injection, which is the analytical meditations. Because it's much stronger than I thought. The negativity is much stronger than I thought. Is what? Yeah. Yes. You've got this thing about desire, don't you? Leave desire alone. We're okay, me and desire. At some point, you won't need the desire. But while you have desire, use it. It's okay. But you see, if you keep using it, it's like you've won the race, you're riding the horse, you've won the race, and you're still flogging the horse. And you're down the road, past the winning post, and you keep beating the horse and saying, go, 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 go. You didn't need to. You could stop. So, because we're wise, we have that inner potential of wisdom. At some point, you're going to realize, I don't need desire anymore to move me in a positive direction. I now have the habit of moving in the positive direction. So, it's develop the habit of wisdom, the habit of compassion, of love, to be spontaneous with your love and your compassion, but conjoining it with wisdom. The spontaneity is, I want to remove the suffering, and the wisdom says, stop. Are you doing the right thing? Is it the right time? Is it the right way? So wisdom and compassion together. So compassion moves you as opposed to desire moves you. But right now we don't have compassion. So we need desire to move us into compassion. Then we have compassion, we don't need desire. Eh? No, it's not a great sin. It's just desire. Isn't it? But if we keep beating ourselves, I have desire, then you think, I'm a really bad person. I mean, I was in the church when I was a child, and we called him vicar. My vicar used to say, you're all going to hell. And at 8 years of age, I'm like, ooh! So what have I done? So it was like that. And then when I saw the poster for Biafra, so it was in those days of Biafra, where the little black child had a big stomach, thin throat, And I went to church and I said in the Sunday school, I asked, why did God create Biafra? And they said, oh, you can't ask these sort of questions. I said, but why not? They said, because God knows much more than you, blah, blah, blah. I went to school and I asked in class, we had religious knowledge class. I asked the same question. They told me to shut up. I couldn't ask questions like that. I went home to my mother, who was an excommunicated Catholic because she married a Protestant. She was kicked out. And I told her, I'm not going to be Christian anymore. After being very Christian, I'm not Christian anymore. She said, did I ask you to be Christian? And that was the end of the story. You know, I just couldn't accept the idea of a creator who creates suffering. That to me didn't make sense. But for many people, it does make sense. The whole system makes sense for them. You have a particular mind that understands Christianity, and you have a particular mind that understands Buddhism. And you've got to find the right system for yourself. Like I said, it's either good luck, bad luck, and many people are into that system, or it's a creator, or it's karma. You've got to get to the right system. And when you've found the right system, you can relax into it. And then in Buddhism, we say, okay, in the Theravadan system, desire would not be a good thing because you're trying to protect yourself and others. In the Mahayana system, it can be used to benefit others. And then in the Tantric system, any energy is just energy. And so you have an understanding that you're only coming from the labeling process. The energy itself is not good or bad, it's just energy. Same as electricity, it's just electricity. But if I go bzzz, you say, wow, really bad. But if you want a washing machine and I use it for a washing machine, you say it's really good. What happened? The usage of the energy labeled it good or bad, not the energy itself. You understand? Okay, we need to dedicate. You can, whatever it is, you can discuss it in your group. So these have to go